afternoon, and welcome back to another episode of the PlantFuelled Femme. Today, we have guest Cindy Dupuie with us, and Cindy is a functional medicine practitioner. She's a nutritionist, and she is really dialed in on helping the women that are in perimenopause. So, I think that this conversation is geared up to be something that's going to be super great. I'm very excited to have you on the show today, Cindy. Thank you for joining.
Well, thank you. I'm excited as well. I'm really excited. And it's perimenopause and menopause that I love to support. So it's both, I know.
Yes, I think that's awesome. And I think it's such a need, inside of, well, our population right now. It seems like that those two particular demographics aren't getting the support and the help that they need from traditional medicine. And then there's like so much information and everyone's confused and everyone says something different. And
Yes.
these women don't know like what is true and what is safe. And
Hmm.
and I think like part of what we're supposed to talk about today is diving into labs. Like, what are markers that are missed? How does that even get missed in conventional medicine?
We'll take a laughing pause here. How does it get missed?
Yes, yes. A lot is missed. That's true.
A lot is missed. Yes. So, you go to your doctor for your annual and you get a lipid panel
Mhm.
and your cholesterol, your triglycerides. You get a CBC and then you get a comprehensive metabolic panel. And I put comprehensive in big quotes here because it's anything but comprehensive. And so that's basically your screening. And I would say most people, I mean, not all the way with this, but in order for your CBCs to be off, you have to, there's something else usually going on. So a lot of people, they do those tests and the doctor says, you are doing great. Your labs look wonderful. Flying colors. I'll see you next year. All right. But that's not how our body works. This is very surface. So as a woman starts to move into perimenopause, so I do recommend these labs that I'm going to be talking about for perimenopausal women as well as menopausal women, and even before we hit perimenopause, so we know what our baseline is. And it's important to know that because, we have our normal ranges that come back on the lab work, and then we have more of the functional optimal ranges that we might want to fall under. But even within that, we have our own levels and we have our own ranges that, I mean, I'll just take me for an example. My thyroid levels, my TSH, my free T4, my free T3 are not in optimal ranges, but I've been hanging out in those ranges for as long as I've been measuring my thyroid. And so that is where I hang out. So we're not panicking. So having a record of that is important and starting even in your 20s, in your early 30s, to have what I'm going to list here, I think is very helpful for you and for your practitioner. So there are basically four additional panels that I do like to recommend women have done. And, we're very fortunate in the US in that we can order our own labs. There's so many different companies online, good ones too, that are very reasonable. And we can walk into Quest or LabCourt and with our little prescription requisition and, just say, I need this done. So it's not that expensive. I would say the labs I'm going to put out there are less than $300 out of your pocket. And to me, good lab work is low-hanging fruit because it's easy to obtain. And if we know how to ask for something, why we're asking for it, often we can get our doctors, I find, to do at least 80, sometimes 90% of what I'm going to put out here. Okay. And that's a savings to you. And by the way, I do have a PDF and it's called the Lab Checklist for the pause years, and it's free. And if I haven't sent you a link, I'll send it to you. And any woman can, download it. And again, it lists what labs, why, and how to ask for them. So that's just a nice little tool to help you. Before I get into the labs, I do, since we're kind of focusing more, I think, on menopause today, I would just like to put this out there, and that is often women will wonder if she's going into perimenopause, maybe the early stages of perimenopause, maybe even late 30s, early 40s, and she may well be. But my experience has been is that there can be something else going on other than her hormones necessarily or her ovaries starting to shut down, but they can mimic. They can mimic the same thing. And so that's why it's really important to make sure you are testing so you know what's happening. We're not missing an opportunity to support a woman where she needs to be, all right there. And I know some doctors are totally against HRT, a woman's in perimenopause, but I think more and more are coming on board and giving a woman HRT, and I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I am opposed to giving a woman HRT when these labs have not been done to make sure that we are not just slapping a patch on, literally,
Right.
okay, so, and an RX, right? And we're missing something else that is going to be underlying and pushing her in the wrong direction unless it's looked at. So, the four additional panels that I look at that I do recommend would be the thyroid panel, and I'll go through all of these, what that would include. It would be the nutrient panel. It's kind of basic. And then the metabolic and inflammatory panel. These are all really important. So with thyroid, a doctor will usually test your TSH and go, we're done.
You're normal. It's good.
Yeah, we're not all good, right? So TSH is not even a thyroid hormone. It is a thyroid stimulating hormone. It's produced in our brain, our pituitary, hypothalamus. And yes, in the ideal world, it is it is modulated by the amount of thyroid hormones that our bodies have circulating in our bodies. That's the ideal thing. It's supposed to be a feedback loop, but so often it doesn't work that way. So if the doctor's just testing your TSH and not measuring your thyroid hormones, we really don't know what's going on. And there's a fair range of normal TSH. And I do think the functional versus the normal really makes a difference. So I think 4.5 is the high end of the normal. And we really don't want it anywhere near 4.5. So you need to know your normal, the optimal, and I'll put it all together. So TSH
Mhm.
in this panel, free T4. So we need to know how much thyroid hormone of T4 is circulating in our body, not the bound, not the total, but the free. Then we need free T3.
Mhm.
Ideally, reverse T3, that's the hardest one to get. And then we have two antibodies that it's really important to see if your antibodies are elevated. They indicate Hashimoto's or even Graves' disease. Okay, so autoimmune disease of the thyroid. And Clarissa, what I have found is some of my clients in their late 20s, and that's why I love it when younger people come to me, is I can see what's going on. And she has elevated thyroid antibodies, but they have not gotten to her thyroid yet. Okay. So if we can work on keeping those antibodies low or even, getting rid of those, all right, by supporting her immune system, which is multifaceted, then the thyroid doesn't have to be attacked. So if we can see things early, and most doctors will not test antibodies, yeah, and until they can see that, oh, we got a problem here. Is it Hashimoto's or what is it? We just got to throw thyroid hormone at her. So those are the six markers that I like to see. And I just want to add one more thing here when it comes to thyroid. Some doctors will do TSH and then they will do free T4. All right. So they go a step further. But what you need to know is that our thyroid hormone produces mainly T4, a little bit of T3. but our cells can only use T3.
Mhm.
And we make T3 from T4. We need minerals, the proper minerals to do that. So we have to look at our iron, selenium, magnesium, all of that, vitamin A. Um, so that conversion of T4 to T3 happens in our liver. So let's say you have good TSH and a good amount of T4. Well, if your body's not converting it to T3 because maybe you don't have enough iron, selenium, whatever it is, or you got a lot of stress, a lot of cortisol, which can steal that and push it into reverse T3, then you still don't have enough thyroid hormone, the active form of thyroid hormone. So if the doctor doesn't take it to another step, you won't know. So that's why all that's really important. All right. So that's your thyroid panel. And then the nutrient panel, vitamin D. Why we have to ask for vitamin D, I know, no idea, no idea. It's like, okay, that just befuddles me. And so that's on there. Homocysteine. I like to look at homocysteine, which is a back-ended way of looking at folate and B12. So I know some doctors will do a direct measure of B12 and folate in the blood. And what I have found, and this is more from um, doing organic acid testing, which actually is the best way of looking at our nutrients. Um, I will see that, maybe someone's B12 and folate is fine in their serum, but when I look at the oats test and the metabolites, it's like, okay, it's really low. So the serum will tell us what's in your blood, but doesn't tell us what your body's doing with it, right?
Right. Right.
So the homocysteine requires folate and B12 in order to be broken down, and even some B6. So if that is elevated, that's a good chance, a good indication, it tells me you need more B12 and folate.
Mhm.
So that's on there. With the nutrient panel, iron, a good iron panel and ferritin, all right?
Why is that so hard?
To what to get?
Yeah, I
Because
can't believe the amount of women that don't have it. It's like, the red blood cell markers will be elevated, but and they're off by just a couple points. So they're fine, but then you check their ferritin and it's like 16.
because yes, so the screening, right, for that the doctors will look at is your basic CBC, so your red blood cell count, your hemoglobin, and your hematocrit. If those look okay, they will not do it unless you push for it. Like, I'm really tired. Um, I have really heavy periods or whatever. You kind of push for it and usually you'll get it done. So why can we see maybe normal iron levels and maybe normal CBCs and hemoglobin and hematocrit, but the ferritin, which is the storage form of iron, why is it low? You just don't have enough iron to store. So that's still telling us that you're still iron deficient. Now, sometimes we can give a woman more iron and that will go up, but that ferritin level is still staying down here. So I like to give something called lactoferrin to kind of help the body shunt that iron into that storage form. Okay. So sometimes a woman doesn't necessarily need more iron, depends on where it is. We just need to help her shunt it into that storage form. And even if iron's okay and ferritin is low, that can still have an impact on thyroid. It can. So we have to look at all of that. So ferritin, even though it isn't technically in the iron panel, needs to be included. And I know some doctors will test ferritin, but not test iron. And we have to have all of it together in order to get a complete picture. Because sometimes, so ferritin's a marker of iron stores, but it's also a marker of inflammation. So ferritin can go up and be fairly high, and we can still have low iron. All
Mhm.
right. That's why we have to see the whole picture together. Always, 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 always. So it's iron, it's iron saturation, and then iron binding capacity along with ferritin. That's your iron panel. Homocysteine iron panel, vitamin D. I know there's another one. I know some doctors will do magnesium. It needs to be RBC magnesium if they're going to do that. If I think of another one, if you think of one, and again, these are low-hanging fruits. This is not functional type of testing. It's just something that you can order yourself, or again, there's a lot of companies out there that do a nice job and not very expensive. I want to move on to, oh, go ahead, Clarissa. Did you want to say something?
I think you're probably going there. The metabolic markers, like
Yeah,
you look at like the A1C, of course, but also fasting insulin is so important.
very important.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's hard to get that. Your
It's
A1C is great, so why would you want to check that?
right. Why would you want to check that? Well, what's going to happen is, and by the way, I don't know if this happens to you, but when I talk about insulin, everyone says, oh, my insulin's great because they think of glucose
Yes.
as that marker,
Right, right.
right? And no, it's rare that you'll see insulin unless you beg, borrow, and steal for it from your doctor.
It's only like $11 to
Yes,
test. Yeah,
I know.
it's so
I
it's
know. I know. Although the one time I did get Kaiser to do it for me, I got a bill. This is before I was on Medicare. I got a bill in the mail that they did a hospital lab marker or whatever. I called them and said, what the heck? And they said it was insulin. I said, it's insulin. I
yeah,
said, why does it get something that's totally different? But anyway, I got them to take the charge off, but they were going to charge me like $150 for it. It is a $10, $11, yeah,
yeah.
marker. Anyway, so why do they don't know, doctors like to test for what they understand, number one, and number two, for what they can give you a medication for. So they can give you a medication for elevated glucose. They can give you a medication for elevated A1C. They can't give you a medication to lower your insulin. They can't. So why is that so important to measure insulin? First of all, we need to understand that insulin's a fat storing hormone. So if your insulin levels are high, it's going to be super hard for you to lose weight because your body is hanging out there going, oh, there's too much glucose here. I got to grab it, right? That's energy. Glucose is energy. And where does it put it if you're not using it right then? It puts it in your fat cells. So it's a fat storing hormone, right? So what happens is that your insulin will go up as much as a decade before your A1C will go up. And it depends on the person. But what your body, it's just so amazing and so intelligent. What it's trying to do is, if you tend to eat meals that are kind of high in sugar or high in carbs and eat a lot and, frequently and all of that.
Yes.
And so there's a fair amount of glucose going into your bloodstream fairly regularly, and the glucose will go up high. Your body has to have insulin ready to grab that glucose to bring your glucose down. That's what it does, right? So I see people with nice A1C and their glucose is 10 and 11, and which isn't super high, but it's too high. It should be
Yeah,
ideally 5 or below.
right.
I'll take 7. I'll even take 9 for my ones that start off at 18, 19. I'll go,
True.
okay.
Yes, in any improvement.
Yeah, any improvement. So, that just means their body is working really well, all right, to try to keep that glucose and that A1C where it's supposed to be, which is A1C is the average of where your glucose is over about a 3-month period. And then we do become more insulin resistant, the cells do for a variety of reasons. And so that insulin will go up again. So that's why, yes, insulin's super important in that metabolic panel, the A1C. The other thing is, we have our lipid panel, but in the lipid panel, the only thing I'm really, not the, yeah, really, that I'm really concerned about is your triglycerides, because
Right.
that also gives us an indication of, how well is your body handling your carbs and your glucose again. So cholesterol is not the boogeyman, and it gets such a bad rap. It's your
Mhm.
inflammation, which I'll talk about in just a minute, That's the issue when it comes to cardiovascular disease. It is not cholesterol. Only a very few percentage of people, like less than 5, I believe, really benefit from taking a statin ongoing and lowering the cholesterol. It's a very small percentage where they can actually show the benefit.
Mm.
So it's inflammation that drives cardiovascular disease. And cholesterol is going to start going up when you move into perimenopause because, again, our bodies are so smart. So one of the reasons cholesterol goes up is the backbone of your hormones. So
Mm-hmm.
your hormones start going down and your body says, excuse me.
Where's she going?
Yeah, we would like more hormones, so we're going to make more cholesterol. And so you have a little more raw material to work with. I'm doing whatever I can. Another indication of cholesterol rising would be more inflammation. And as our hormones drop, inflammation can go up very easily, especially with the drop in estrogen. Another reason why our cholesterol can go up is if we all of a sudden have hypothyroidism. All right. So again, if we just slap on that HRT and don't look at our thyroid, we're missing something here. And it's interesting if any woman listening here, her cholesterol, let's say, was up over 200, which is no big deal. And for most people, again, that inflammation. And you start taking an adequate, not just a drop, but an adequate amount of estrogen, you'll see your cholesterol go down like that.
Oh, that's
You'll,
amazing.
yeah, I saw mine go down, and not that mine I was ever worried about it, but I upped my estrogen. I was playing with a little bit, doing a little bit of hacking.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I went, oh, wow, I dropped 20 points here. Okay.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
amazing.
did nothing else but that. So there's different reasons for it. So don't let a doctor put you on a stand. There's so many side effects, especially in women. And just know that the cholesterol is not necessarily the boogeyman. And that LDL, which is part of your cholesterol, if you start to see that creeping up, creeping up, creeping up, I would look at more your inflammatory markers than anything else, although your metabolic markers, so insulin is also very inflammatory. So
Mhm.
we can go to the inflammatory markers now. Insulin's one of them. So if that's high, that's very inflammatory. And then HSCRP, which is high sensitive C-reactive protein. Ferritin would be one of those as well. And, C-reactive protein doesn't tell us where our inflammation is coming from, but it just indicates that we have some type of low grade or even higher grade inflammation. Could be the gut, could be oral, could be all of that. Could be the loss of hormones. Again, our estrogen really does squash our inflammatory response. And once that's taken away, once we lose that, then usually more inflammation does arise in especially postmenopausal women. Yeah. So I'm just trying to think of inflammatory markers. Can you think of anything else?
Those are the ones I
You
normally
do?
check. I
Okay.
mean, you can get into like super expensive, complex testing for inflammation, but that's not what the general population needs.
No, it's not. It's like as if we can't handle it, if we see something that's really out of range, then we need to go further. But this is what we're talking about here are things that are easy to get and again, low-hanging fruit, and it's a really good place to start. I do want to mention this just because I don't know if you have any menopausal women listening to this or not, but I want to add these are bone markers. And I want to add this just because it's not talked about that much. But let's say you've been diagnosed with osteoporosis and you get your scan and the doctor may say, even if you have osteopenia, this happened to me, it's like, really? What? She says, because I'm going to recommend a biphosphonate. And I went, I, I'm like not even like I'm 1 point over to osteopenia, and we didn't discuss my diet, my nutrition, my exercise. my history. It was the most incredible experience I have ever had. And the thing is you don't want to just hand out biphosphonates willy-nilly. It's not something you want to do. You can't be on it for very long, over 5 years. It's just, anyway, I digress a bit. But usually a doctor, if they feel like there's been enough bone loss and they want to prevent it, they may suggest that. Hopefully they suggest other things as well. But they usually don't test you again with a DEXA scan, with a bone scan for another year. Well, I don't know about you, but I kind of want to see if what I've started to do is making a difference in 6 months or so,
Right.
whether or not it's HRT, it's diet, it's whatever it is. And so there are two markers that you can test in blood. And this is important also to understand where your body needs more of the support. So the two markers, the one that looks at your breakdown of bone, what the osteoclast is doing, is the CTX score. So it looks at your breakdown. And then there's another one that's looking at your buildup. Okay, so we need both happening. And that has to do with your osteoblasts. And that's the P1 and P. So if you have osteoporosis, I don't know if you necessarily need to have this if you're osteopenic. Maybe if you're really moving close to the osteoporotic, maybe you do want to see that. Or maybe you do want to see your baseline. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, in perimenopause and get that. So those are only two other two markers that you might want to have done. It's a little bit harder, I have found to, I've had a little bit harder time finding the P1MP I have for whatever reason. And they are probably the little more expensive ones of everything that I mentioned here, but I still don't think they're over $50 a piece. I don't think they are. Yeah. So. So that's the labs basically for, perimenopause. Oh, the only other thing I want to mention about labs, the difference between perimenopause and menopause is I do not measure um, estrogen and progesterone during perimenopause because you're all over the place from day to day, from hour to hour. You are on a roller coaster. And so to try to measure those, it's like, why are we doing this? Um, Now, in menopause, if you are on HRT, I definitely like to see it. Like to see what your HRT is doing. Is it supporting you? Are you absorbing it? Are you not absorbing it? I do like to see FSH, maybe in both perimenopause and menopause. FSH kind of gives an idea in perimenopause at how close you are getting to menopause because that FSH will go up. And then in menopause, I like to measure the FSH because it's a good indication of, you know, are you getting enough estradiol for you, for your body? Because there will be a signal to your brain saying, I've got enough, and that FSH will go down. And we want it below 15 or so, and that can be really helpful when it comes to bone density as well. So, testosterone's nice to see where you're at. And again, every woman is different, and what level that she likes to be. So,
Right. Right. And I think, that even you took your estrogen and kind of experimented with your dose because, like you said, everyone's going to feel different and feel better and respond a little bit differently to the medications.
yeah.
So I think finding your dose, well, while that can be challenging, I think that's
When you do it after a little while, you learn how to hack it. You do. And I know women are a little bit afraid of going outside of what their doctors tell them to do. And I'm not necessarily saying that that is something that you need to do, but I don't think you have to be quite as frightened, especially once you do get educated and understand how estrogen works, how progesterone works, how testosterone works. I think you can, testosterone, yeah, you want that. Um, if you want to pop up a couple pumps with a cream and on your patch and see how you feel. and maybe even get it tested so you know the range that you like to be at. Yeah, I think I just switched from a cream. All mine have been compounded. And I thought, I'm kind of sick of paying out of pocket. So I decided to go on a patch and see how I do with that. Decided to go with the Prometrium, progesterone, the pill. And I'm finding I'm topping off a little bit right now. So I am going to test to see where my blood levels are, um, just out of curiosity. And I'm finding that the progesterone pill, and I don't take it orally. I do it vaginally because it messes with my digestive system. I'm just one of those. And I'm finding that I hold a lot of water. So I'm kind of going back to my progesterone cream. I'm going to build up a little bit with that and then go back to the pill again to see what happens. It just might be too much for me.
Right. Yeah, and with the micronized progesterone, you like get 100 or 200. Like there's
And
no
I'm on the 100 and it's
yes.
still, I'm very
Yeah.
sensitive to it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, me too. And I keep kind of like going back and forth. My doctor has been really nice about giving me two different prescriptions so
Yeah.
that I can, find the right dosage, but it still seems to be really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So we do have to be patient with it. We
We do,
do.
we do.
We
But
do.
but you can figure it out. It just takes it takes some time.
It does take some time, and it's nice to have a good background again on what exactly estrogen does, what progesterone does, the roles in our body, because I think we get stuck on, estrogen is for fertility, right? Or progesterone is for fertility, and then it's for testosterone is for libido.
Yes, that's
It's
what
kind
it's
of like siloed right there. It's like, no.
supposed.
Estrogen affects every single organ tissue in our bodies. And if we don't understand that and how,
Hmm.
I think it's hard to put the dots together. And I think it's hard to advocate for ourselves. So it's not just about hot flashes. It's not just about night sweats. It's not just about not being able to sleep. There are so many different levels.
Hmm.
And, I've heard a couple doctors talk about um, estrogen particularly in women and testosterone, particularly in men, although there's a crossover for both, right?
Yes, yes.
Um, being the longevity
Mhm.
chemical.
Right.
Eh,
No, it really is. And,
mhm.
and and you're right. Men have those like a need to have the female hormones
Oh
as well.
yeah.
Like I literally just ordered last week estrogen and progesterone testing for a man. Nobody
Yes.
does that. So, hello, we got to see where yours is at.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so you probably have mostly women here, but some of you might have men in your
Right.
lives.
And a lot of you have husbands.
Yes, yes.
They have night sweats and hot flashes.
They do. And sometimes, they might have low testosterone. We got to see where their estradiol level is. Okay, are they converting their testosterone into estradiol? Maybe they don't need more testosterone. Maybe they need a blocker, all right? Something natural
Mm.
that blocks that conversion. So yeah, it's all, and you have to ask for it. I have my partner, he has to ask for his estradiol
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah, I'm sure because they just the mainstream medical isn't designed to be preventative. And
No.
with the functional medicine and the way that things are looked at, you're looking at the whole system and how you improve the whole system. So we have to look at foundation, we have to look, into the other areas, all of these labs that you mentioned that don't get looked at inside of conventional medicine to get the big picture so that we can understand how do I feel better? Because
Yeah.
otherwise you just go chasing prescriptions and you end up
Yes.
with like 20
Yes.
prescriptions.
And Clarissa, I know you see this because of your client base, but one of the reasons why I kind of pivoted into specifically perimenopause and menopause about 5 or 6 years ago was because I was seeing my own clients who I knew how they ate. I knew their lifestyle. I knew their sleep. They had pretty much everything dialed in, but I was seeing them lose ground. And I thought, okay, there's a piece of this puzzle that I
Yes.
can't ignore anymore. So
Right.
that was one thing. And then the other is, I got really lucky when I was 50. So I've been on HRT for 18 years. And we can talk about when to start, when to stop. I don't, we probably have a time frame here that we're probably running close with, but I know. Um, but I have been, it was just been low dose too, because that's what they gave out
Yeah.
18 years ago, right? Low dose estrogen and bioestrogen, and I didn't know any better. And I was watching my contemporaries go to the doctors like a lot, be in pain a lot, not being able to enjoy their lives.
Mhm.
That mental belly is growing, their pre-diabetes, I mean,
Mhm.
inflammatory markers, all these things. I'm going, I'm on HRT, they aren't. And, I even know, women who take pretty good care of themselves. There is a difference. And, some women say, I go through perimenopause and I floated through it. Or some women go, okay, I'm done with all the roller coaster ride of perimenopause. Everything seems like it settled down once I'm in menopause. The thing is that what women don't realize is that we have an iceberg. And everything that's showing above the surface are the things, the hot flashes, the not to be able to sleep, and maybe the mood swings, the brain fog. Some of those can continue as we go into menopause, but they often settle down and often a lot. But it's all that stuff below the surface, that cardiovascular disease, that bone loss, that brain, Alzheimer's, the urogenital, all those things are still affected by that loss of estrogen. And it's silent until it's not.
Right.
So, do you need hormones once you move into menopause? In my opinion, I would say majority of women do. There are some women who seem to do really well. I think it's a small percentage. And, that is awesome. And if it's not broken, don't fix it. But I
Yes.
would say majority of women do. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's very much the experience that I've had inside of coaching. And I think it's awesome to find another person that's doing the same thing. I really love it.
It
But we
is
do,
nice.
it
It is
is,
nice.
it is. It can feel lonely sometimes.
I know. I know.
But we do need to wrap things up for today. So I want to thank you for sharing, about those labs. I think we covered a ton of information that's really
Oh,
valuable
good.
for our audience. I think it's super great, the more that they can educate themselves, the more they can advocate for themselves. So thank you for giving them some more tools today. I truly appreciate that. I think we've had a wonderful conversation, and thank you so much
Yes.
for your time.
Thank you, Clarissa. It has been a pleasure. Thank you for letting me talk.
Absolutely. It was a wonderful conversation. All right. And to our audience, thank you for joining us today. If you have questions, you're always welcome to reach out, and we will see you next time on another episode of the Plant Fueled Femme.